Tamara Caulder Richardson, and welcome to the Seeking Heaven channel.
If you're having a great day, and thanks for joining us today. So I am your host, Tamara Caulder Richardson, and thanks for being here. And want to tell you a couple things about this channel and also about me. I do have an Ascension School, Academy of Divine Wisdom. If you sign up for the newsletter, you get a free 30-minute Christ-like, the same one I experienced in this divine light that I'm using are the upper crown Christ chakras that I experienced in my NDE. So check that out, and my courses. And I do a lot of teachings, and I also have guest teachers. So check that out. I also have some starseed services. So if you're interested in light code activations, past life, soul discovery, earth mission, angelic transmission, your galactic star channeling of your lifetime, or your earth mission here, or coaching, that's available, as well as a highly trained evidential medium. And if you would like to connect to your loved ones and they have a whole conversation about you, it's a reunion for sure with evidence, then you can also check that out at southernbellemedium.com. And then finally, make sure you subscribe to this channel at the Seeking Heaven channel. And we have at least weekly, sometimes bi-weekly episodes, and I make sure I have terrific guests. And today I have Victoria Reynolds. She is an author of multiple books, such as Recreating Earth, Transcending Fear, Little Marigold, Free Your Spirit, Own Your True Worth, and Rise Up. I think everybody, if you're human, I don't care if you're born in the jungle, I don't care, or the desert, or where, if you're human and you're on planet Earth, everybody's been indoctrinated. And sometimes it's not malicious, but, into some kind of religion or ideology. And it's really difficult, but necessary. That's why I think when people have these dark nights of the soul, they're addressing their teachings, their dogma, their so-and-so, and they're saying, they're questioning it. Is this, how is this true? Do we have a mean God? Do we have free will? And I think it's important to go through. And it's a process, and there are layers of it. But when did that start happening for you, when you decided, let me relook at this?
Well, it really wasn't until what I call my midlife reawakening, my midlife transition, my midlife holy shift. It really wasn't until then. So I questioned a little bit as I was growing up. And when I was 4 years old, I got my hands on a magazine, and there were women in the magazine that didn't look anything like the women in my neighborhood. And I had said to myself, when I grow up, I want to be like those women. So it kind of started then when I was 4. And then in high school, convincing my parents to let me go to high school. And I got to see a little bit more of the outside world. And I started questioning more when, like you, I started moving up through the echelons of religion. Also in high school, that's when my dad married his second wife, and I saw what it did to my mom. Even though she believed that was best for her, it ripped her heart out that my dad was sleeping and having babies with another woman. And then I also, at the same time, because I was so religiously curious, I started going to these like invitation only meetings. And that's where I found out that a man really needs to have 12 wives to get to heaven. And I started, and that once you're married to him, you're married to him for eternity.
Oh, that just wouldn't do for a lot of people watching.
I was like, that does not sound like heaven. Nothing about that sounds like heaven to me. And the rest of forever with a man I don't like.
What kind of sales package is this? I don't know. I mean,
well, that was kind of the catalyst that pushed me out. So I was suicidal at 17. I decided I was going to kill myself. I was standing on the edge of a cliff ready to jump because I had been molested. I had been raped. I'd been promised to my dad's best friend when I was 11 years old. And
your God,
I needed out. So I was going to jump. And then my inner voice, my higher self, came in and told me, the message that came in is, what is everything you've ever been taught about everything is a lie? And what if there's something better out there? So that was enough for me to question, step away from the cliff. And then I did find a way out a couple of months.
Glad you did.
Into the details. So that was another level of questioning. So it hasn't just been one time, but what happened in 2008 was that catalyst moment that I think a lot of us experience. That catalyst that brought me to my knees, cracked me open, and then I started realizing that everything I'd ever believed about everything needed to be questioned. So I started questioning everything. And I started realizing that the greatest suffering in my life was because I was still in a unconscious level, still believing a lot of this stuff. And that when we start having the courage to disbelieve everything we've ever believed about everything, that's when divine truth can start to come in. That's when the veil of separation between us and source, creator, love, God can actually get in past the barriers of beliefs that we've been indoctrinated with. And it doesn't matter if it's religion, parents, education, whatever, because it could be the television. We've all, like you said, we've all been indoctrinated. Everybody's been indoctrinated. So there's a point when we become mature enough to look at all of our indoctrination and determine if it serves our highest and greatest good or not.
Absolutely. And then at some point, I'm thinking now, you're making me think, like, when was this? I think it started for me. I am a slow learner in some ways. I'm really fast, lightning speed. In other ways, I'm really slow and really hard-headed. But it was 38 because things for me, I had an advertising agency that was doing good. I was partying. I got to go on nice trips. I would take women clients out. I remember one night I drank 28 martinis. Shouldn't have been dead. I don't know, but it was a fun time. You think I should be dead. Maybe they were weak. I don't know. So, and one day I was like, just like that, just like I did in the S group I told you, I'm like, you need to connect to source. And I went, you're right. I'm thinking God. Just like that, I went, I don't want to do this anymore. I had always gone to, like, if I'm in New York, where I go to the fanciest place that I would get in, and I did this little thing. It was fun. And I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And then I started to question everything, but I think I've had layers of that questioning, and I have layers of that now. It's but it's another layer on that onion. It's a higher, the more you know, then you I think it's important when you're taking in information to not judge that information, but to stay in a neutrality position and learn and read. And then at some point, you're going to start asking questions like, well, what is this? I don't believe everything, but I think that sometimes you have to be patient to see how it unfolds and rolls out. So I feel like I'm at this next level of this whole ascension, which some people call the rapture. I don't like using Bible names because it's a trigger. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. So even for me, and I know a lot of people, I use the word God for the longest time because it was such an oppressive word for me. I still prefer to call it love because love is right. God is love. It is the energy that is and creates all things. This divine
creator is nice. Source is good.
Yes. And so I had one friend who said he uses God as an acronym of goodness on demand. I was like, I like that. So there are a lot of other words we can use. I personally love divine love.
I like divinity. I like divinity. I like divine love. I use divinity a lot in divine, and I'm trying to talk about source, God, the creator, whatever those words are. But I'm trying to stay away trigger words.
Well, so I reframed Ascension, which is a religious term. A lot of spiritual people don't realize that it is, and I've actually been like, oh yeah, that's actually a word I grew up with. New Earth is actually a religious term. People think it's just a spiritual term. And rapture definitely is specific to some religions. So I did a tune in about the word rapture. And what I got from that is being enraptured by divine love.
Okay.
Raptured by Mother Creator's divine love, Mother Source divine love. She is back and enrapturing humanity into these higher vibrations of love and light. And so when I reframed it as that, being in that state of love, it is rapture when you're in that love.
Yes. That's a good way to look at things. I notice that when I have spiritual sessions with people, right? And it's always about the healing. I never know what it's going to go. They'll say, I want that, and they'll get that, but it always is more. What I find that this comes up with different all over the world, the different people, but I'll be trying to explain something at some point, and I will explain it. And occasionally, someone will go, I don't understand, or what are you talking about? Because there's one word they have a trigger on.
Mm-hmm.
So what I have to do is go back and say the explanation again, eliminating anything that I think will be a trigger word, and use a different example. And then they're like, okay. So we have all these little trigger words in there, and they could be something like the word bird. You don't know what the trigger word is.
Right.
And so we need to figure out what are our trigger words. Some people it's God. Some people, when you say Jesus, they freak out and have a meltdown.
Mm-hmm.
Some people, I don't know what their word is. It doesn't even have to be religious. It could be, there was one word I used with someone which was feminine, and they had a meltdown.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because they were told they were not feminine. And I said, well, I'm not here to judge.
You know what? And I can understand that, because there was a time when I thought the word feminine was a sign of weakness.
And I had to redefine what I thought was strong in women, just talking about readjusting what we think is dogma, or reprogramming. It's all personal to each of us. I started going, wow, there's strength in women.
So fear-based beliefs don't necessarily look like fear. Judgment is a fear-based belief. How we judge ourselves, and how we judge the actions of others based on how we think they should be, should itself is a fear-based belief. Guilt, shame, resentment, blame, that's all based in fear. So when you let go of the judgment toward how you think other women should be, then you get to the place of compassion, which is love-based. And you understand, right, that everyone is doing the very best they can with what they know, given their circumstances. And we can then hold compassion for those women who might still hold themselves in victimization, but the belief in being a victim is also fear-based. So if we can reframe our stories, they can actually become what I call our wings instead of our baggage, because we all have a story. We all have a backstory. We can reframe the backstory so that it becomes a power story instead of a pain story. It can become a love story instead of a fear story. But it takes us doing the work. It's what we call doing our shadow work, what I call processing our stories. And when we process those fear-based beliefs and we can transmute them into love, then those stories no longer have power over us. And we no longer hold resentment toward other people and blame and all those fear-based beliefs that are part of this old reality. If we're going to ascend out of this old reality, we've got to be willing to no longer hold ourselves and each other and in those old beliefs.
Amen, sister. And it's hard work. And I do want to back up when you were talking about the abuse and the sexual abuse. This is common too. I had it too. And I had people that knew about it. And I was angry very badly in my 20s and 30s. I'm not that person now, but every now and then I'll find myself, I'm like, but then it goes away very quickly.
Right.
I'll go, okay, and I'm fine. And it really does go away. But it's because people knew and they did nothing. And you think, well, why do people experience that? Well, if you put it, in my opinion, put it in perspective, we do live forever. We are an eternal spiritual being. And I feel more sorry for the person who was the perpetrator, because they weren't mentally healthy. But for me, it made me stronger, and it made me more compassionate to others. And I can see people suffering now. And I don't know if I would have been able to see it so readily. Mm-hmm. And I also have a lot more respect that if people have done the spiritual work to transmute that negative energy, those negative thought processes, into something that could propel them to have a happy life and move forward. And so, it's a shame that it happens so much, but I do find a lot of people that are on a spiritual path have some kind of, I don't know what it is. It could be money, it could be hard luck story or something. And I think that's the thing that, that's part of the lesson, is what we do with that. What do you think?
Exactly. So if we're looking at it from a soul perspective, from a higher perspective.
Correct.
As soul, we choose it's not like there's this mean magical man in the sky that puts us in these
Right.
environments. We don't accidentally
Right.
end up in these
You're
environments.
right.
We choose the environment that we incarnate into. It's interesting that I had for the very first time, I had my chart read, my astrological chart. Finally, people kept asking, what's your rising sign or whatever? So I finally had my chart read. And in the message that came in, I actually didn't know what time I was born. My birth certificate doesn't have a time on it. So we had to figure out when I was born. And so I was tuning in and I'm asking up, how did this work? And the answer that came in is that as soul, we choose when, where we're going to be born. We pinpoint the exact time, date, and location of where we're born so that logically it all lines up with the lesson we're here to learn and with what we're here who we're here to be. So how can I, as a spiritual teacher, teach other people how to process their pain stories if I didn't also have one?
It's sad, but it's the truth. It's absolutely the truth. And I remember watching and stalking my mom as spirit, watching her and going, she is so cute. Look at that. Look how cute she is. And she is cute. She's still cute. She's like a fae. She giggles all the time. She's like, she's like a little kid that never grew up. And I remember following her. And I also remember her mother, who was really strong and who was a business owner. And I like that combination too, because I learned a lot from her. So we do pick them out. I mean, I've seen people copulating like at past lives, and I'm like, I'm going with that family, and jumped in, and I'm going, and it wasn't attractive, by the way. It was not very attractive, that but we pick them out, and we pick out for this incarnation what we need to help, because that's why I think everybody's thinking, okay, whatever the word you want to use, what the best that we can understand it, ascend, or I don't know, whatever the word is. I think
it doesn't really matter what word we use. It could be, it's rising up in consciousness. It is.
Sure. We may need a better word, Victoria. You may need to come up with a better word for us, because that one's.
Oh, then ascension?
Yeah, because that's used a lot. I think the bottom line is, in our heart, in our gut, we're like, look, we got a shot at getting out of this duality. We got a shot of not doing this karma crap. This is done this time. I'm taking it 100%. Anyone wants to go with me? I mean, you almost feel like, here's your shot. The door's getting ready to open. Let's jump in there. Let's end this cycle for something positive. And that's how I feel. I don't know how you feel. And maybe we need a better word.
Well, it means raising up in consciousness. So, it's so funny because people wanted to go from 3D to 5D, which is it's a new term for creating heaven on earth. And they want to bypass the 4D, which is where we do all of our shadow work. That actually is where we do the life processing. That's where the spiritual spiral is that allows us to move into these higher vibrations of consciousness. When enough of us do our work, our spiritual work. And yes, it is not easy. Sometimes it's a lot of fun. Sometimes it's actually really funny. There are times when I'll have an epiphany. I'm like, oh my God, that is hysterical. I can't believe I used to believe that. So parts of it can be very funny. And parts of it, the more we drop those old fear-based beliefs, the more fun it actually becomes. But in the beginning, it's not easy. I can't tell you the number of times my kids were at school and my husband was at work, and I'm sitting there bawling my eyes out because I was letting go of these old beliefs and holding myself in compassion as I'm working through, purging these old beliefs that had once been so entangled in my physical makeup, they needed to come out. That's coughing and coughing and coughing. And some people do it through other things, right? It's got to come out somehow. In my case, it comes
it's true.
Coughing, but some people get, they
sweat, they throw up, they've got to go to the bathroom.
It's got to come out somehow.
Well, it's healthy. It's good. And it's funny. You said heaven on earth. And I went, boom. It's just that simple. But people
it is that simple.
Look at this, something I do today. I was like, all right, I'll draw this picture. No,
it is a spiritual spiral.
There's an earth. You see that little hand? That's like, boom, the little souls coming in, the little pepper thing there. And it's like this, it's coming right in, and it's on heaven on earth. But they want the spiral to be a reflection, and it's not right now. They want it. mirrored.
It is. It's a reflection of the collective consciousness. So
Yes.
as we individually come to peace and love and heaven within ourselves. I mean, even Yeshua said heaven is within. When we find it inside of ourselves, the collective consciousness changes and starts rising up in consciousness. And our physical reality is a reflection of our collective consciousness. So it's not going to change.
Very well said.
Now we just wake up one day and suddenly everything's fixed. Our reality changes because enough of us choose to change it.
Well, that's what we're doing.
By being the change we want to see in the world.
Right. We're being our own chivalry. We're like, okay, what do I need to clean this up within ourselves so we can move forward? And I see people doing that. And I don't think does it ever end? I don't think so. I think there's layers on layers and higher, it's more higher frequency. But I see a lot of people doing that. I also see a lot of people that are spiritual leaders, healers, whatever you want to call it, light workers, people that are waking up, that are regular people that they're waking up. And then I also see people that are working together like, hey, because we're stronger as one. And I think anytime that you have a platform, whether it's something like this or at an event, that you can start talking about this higher consciousness stuff, then you get people to see they have a choice.
Well, I mean, we can call it ascension. Is like we said, it is a very used term. It's a religious term. It's also a spiritual term. But what it really means is to rise up. It's about rising up in consciousness. Is really what it means. And what it is returning home to love. So people think they have to die to go to heaven. They think they have to die to go back to God, back to the love that is God, and not understanding it's actually inside of us. So ascension is really about coming home to the love that has always been within us. It's always been there.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I couldn't agree more. And I think that the biggest thing that I see, and I don't know what you feel about this, is people's sense of unworthiness. And here's the thing, everybody is a vessel of love. They just need to see it. And even if you just see your kids or someone that really loves you looking at you, that's how you should see yourself. So tell people that maybe if they're going through the dark night of the soul, or if they are still working through their dogma, what's real for them, what's not, or if they have had some type of brainwashing in a cult-like situation or what have you, and they want to clean that up, what is some advice other than they should buy your book? They need to buy your book. Right. But what's some advice you can say, and go to your website and VictoriaReynolds.com and buy the book, the Transcending book. What are something you could tell them right now just to encourage them?
I think that what's really, really important to understand is that all of us face this. It's interesting because for me, it happened around 40 as well. It's like an experience that happens in our life that causes us to wake up and start to question. COVID was actually one of the greatest gifts on the planet because
are you kidding? I stopped all sorts of stuff I didn't like doing. It was great. Yes. I got rid of people. I had great excuses. It was fantastic. I got to focus on me. I didn't love the COVID part, but I love having the excuse, and I love being able to do my own thing. Was it the same way? It was fantastic. It was like a rebirth.
Correct. And actually, it's interesting you bring up rebirth because for me, my awakening happened when I was around 40, and the 2000-day recession was the catalyst for that. And that these moments that look like the worst things that could happen to you are actually catalysts for awakening. So COVID was a global catalyst for awakening. And I can't tell you the number of people who said, oh my gosh, I just started waking up in 2020. It's been really extraordinary to see. So what we have now I call them spiritual newbies, not name calling or anything. It's actually a very beautiful, loving word that I use for them.
It's true. It's awesome. I think it's fantastic.
It is fantastic. And spiritual newbies are so amazing because they skyrocket up the spiritual spiral. It's much faster in the beginning and they're spiritually hungry. Yeah. And so our role, because we woke up before, is to help guide them through this process. up the spiritual spiral.
Yeah, because we've been there.
Yes.
And it was just as painful back when we had it. So I get it. And
the beautiful thing is it's happening much, much faster now than it did back then.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I actually had a little bit of resentment toward that. So back in 2010, when I had my awakening.
Yeah, we did more suffering. I don't know.
Yeah. What I was told is that in about 10 years, it won't take nearly as long. And a part of me was like, well, that's not fair.
Well,
so now it's happening much faster for humanity. Humanity's moving through this shadow work, then the processing much, much, much faster than we ever have before. It's a really beautiful place to be. And part of that's because so many of us have already done the work. We've already laid the groundwork. The resources are already in place for people to go through this ascension process, for lack of a better word, much faster than we used to. And so if there has been a really traumatic experience in your life, understand it was probably a catalyst for your awakening. And that's how you learn to love that process. And to not be afraid to question everything you've ever believed. Everything.
Go for it.
Because as you question it, it starts peeling off the layers of disbelief. And as you peel off all of those layers, you get closer and closer and closer to the divine within.
Oh,
and not be afraid to go there, and not be afraid to cry your eyes out. If you feel like you need to cry, then by all means, get down on the floor and have a 2-year-old temper tantrum to get the stuff out of your system. Be so compassionate with yourself while you're going through it.
I am grateful when that happens. I'm going, okay, thank you. I'm grateful because I'm at another level of opening my eyes. And what I found, I feel more empowered. I feel more in control. I feel more sureness about my beingness. And there's no one that can tell me any differently. And I always say the greatest journey you'll ever have is yourself, right? I mean, your best teacher is you, because it's real to you when you go through things. But I find that people, it's kind of cute when I see people waking up. You're talking about the newbies, and from 2020, a lot of people started waking up, right? Different things got them waking up. It could be like, wait a minute, this is fishy, or whatever it was. But I noticed all of a sudden they get real angry. And before they were just content with things, maybe, let's say, and they became very angry because that's one of the first stages.
Absolutely. And I think that's important for people to understand that. So there are a couple of things really quick. This is what Yeshua meant when he said, you must be born again. It had nothing to do with him. It's about being born again in spirit. So it's like that midlife reawakening, a midlife rebirth that happens. And understand that this is a rebirthing process that you're going through. And what's also part of it, when we understand that when you first have this awakening, you're going to go through the 5 stages of grief. And so this is why I talk about being compassionate with yourself as you're moving through the process, because that first step of the grief process is anger.
Well, that's actually high, because you could just be sad and depressed and crying all the time, or feel like you don't count. Being pissed is kind of like pretty high up, right? Because then at that point you go, what? And then you start looking for changes and solutions. And so some people said, well, everybody's so mad now. I'm like, let them be mad. They'll get over it. And then they'll go to the next phase. And they just woke up. Just let them be upset for a while. I mean, look, if you've been in the dark and all of a sudden you're at the land of Oz, and someone opens the curtain, it's a little man behind there, and you're pissed, and you could have left all along and done your own thing, and you're stuck in Oz, and you might be a little upset. So let them be upset for, but it goes by quickly. Like you said, they're because everybody else is speeding up. We're having conversations like this. They don't stay in it.
Right.
And then they become part of not the problem, but the solution. But when you're waking up to see, wait, I haven't been told exactly the truth. Wait a minute, that might make someone upset. And so I let them have it. And I think it's kind of funny. I'm like, well, I get it. Why aren't you upset? I'm like, well, yeah, I get it. You don't get it? Yeah, I get it. But let's be part of instead of the problem, let's be part of the solution. So
Absolutely.
I'm really grateful to see all kinds of people, just regular people, teachers, doctors, policemen, principals, all kinds of people waking up now. And that has I've never seen that happen before.
Well, it is the mass awakening that we were talking about, that the masses of humanity are starting to wake up, and it's beautiful. And when you talk about anger, I think what's important for people to understand is that anger is great for burning off things. It's actually like fire. It burns off what doesn't serve us. The issue is that when some people get stuck in anger, that it becomes an issue. So let's feel that you feel the anger and you feel it burn off everything that doesn't serve you, and then you move into the next level.
Oh, no, I like that. I'm a fire sign, so no wonder I was angry in my 20s. So I burned off a lot of negative energy.
Before the anger, there is that depression, right? It's that hopelessness. Before that, hopelessness. You get to the place where hope is like a little spark, and then it can actually spark your ascension process. And what happens when you spark something? You start a fire. And
I love
so you go through that hopelessness and then hope, and then you spark that anger, and then it starts to burn everything off, and you start to see what you couldn't see before, and then there's more seeing, and then you start moving up the spiritual spiral. For me, it looks like a spiral staircase. So you go up a step, you process, then you go up a step, you go around a little bit more, and you process more, and then you go up and you process a little bit more, and you might sit on a step for a while, but you really don't go backwards.
You don't go backwards. That is
you might
point.
At a level
Do not.
If you're not willing to continue questioning the narratives and questioning the stories around, then you might get stuck at a level for a while. But what's really fascinating is I'll go through and I'll do all this work around a belief system, and then like a spiral staircase, it comes back around again. And I'm like, oh, I thought I was done with that. But then I'm just processing it at a higher level.
That's the kind of stuff. I'm doing this stuff now, and I'm like, I don't worry about it. I'm like, okay, well, something's going on. So maybe I'm looking at it from a different perspective. And what you're doing is you're realigning that recorded information. Like, this was a crap recording. Let's replace it with this one, because I've resorted it, refiled it in a better way. And so this is the inner work that we have to do.
What's really exciting is when it comes back around, and it comes back around again, and you look at it and go, oh,
you're not even upset.
You're like, it's not there anymore. Yay.
You look at it like, right? You're kind of like, You're like, okay. And so I see you can see people where they are. And I think this is where what I've been told that Christ has told me, which is really good advice. He's definitely one of my teachers. He said that let someone experience the good, bad, and ugly. He said, it doesn't matter. In the end, they're all love. He said, let them experience it. And he said, it's important to go through all of this. So when someone, as I find with people, they'll see someone and say, look at them, they're like here and they're doing this and that. Let them be for a while. Let them go through, fall down on their knees, they'll find out, what the problem is. They'll find out. Just sometimes you need to have grace with people. You need to see them falling, but unless there's something really, an issue, there's intervention. But otherwise, most people get back up and they figure it out and they're fine. But we need to let people make mistakes.
Well, and we don't know what another person's path is. Part of the issue is we try to get too attached to other people's paths. And
it's not our business. We don't need to come in and save everybody. I know that's kind of, and I don't mean to be disrespectful to anyone when I say that, but it's kind of arrogant to feel like I can come in and save your life. Now, if you go, Tamara, I'd like to run something by you. What do that's fine. Or I don't mind helping people, but it's arrogant to think we can do that when we're not responsible for everybody.
Well, but that's actually a normal part of the rising up, returning to love ascension process. is that when people first have their spiritual awakening, they think they need to save everyone else. That's why you actually even have like born again Christians who suddenly think they need to go out and share. Everybody else needs to be a born again Christian because they've found that the love that works for them, the connection to spirit that works for them. And so they feel like they need to save everyone else. And that's okay. That actually is a normal part of the process. And I call it the transcendence process because that's just what I call it. But but as you start transcending up and out of that old fear-based reality, that savior complex, in a sense, is a normal part of the ascension process. So if you're someone who's watching this and you feel like you need to save the world, understand that is actually a normal phase that you go through. And then you start to realize, oh, wait, I'm not here to save the world. The way to save the world is to be an example of what's possible. Yeah. So it always comes back to
walk.
Who am I being? Who am I being? Who am I being?
And we're going to make mistakes. People, they're so quick to judge others. Now, people need to know this. If you judge others real quick, you're really judging yourself.
It's called projections of self-judgment.
Yeah. So, when you cut people grace, you get it back. And I don't expect perfection from people. All I can expect them is to speak from their heart at that time.
Right.
People's opinions change. So I think that it was it's so helpful to so many watching, talking about these concepts. It's not really, you don't have to have a formal organized religion. It could be just the way you're brought up. I think everyone should question things and ask free will what's good for them. And it should be a process we should kind of do on and off our whole life. So I'm so glad you helped walk people through today. Things they need to look at. And I want everybody to take a look at Victoria's website too. And I want you to look at the book she's talking about, which is Transcending Fear, where she's actually got a channel download how to move past that and really set yourself free. And you're an example of that. So I thank you so much for the work that you're doing and stepping forth and being an example.
Thank you so much. And likewise.
Please subscribe, like, and make comments, and support this channel by becoming a member. Thank you for your continued support.